Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to the show RPG with DBJ. I'm glad you were able to get a ticket and show up here in this imagination for tabletop RPGs. Thank you very much. This show is broadcast over 3 platforms. So if you are a individual who is a Twitch affiliate, a YouTubian, or you would like to join us on our Discordian link, you may choose to take place in all those, everyone. And thank you very much there. By the way, Jarl DM, I was just talking about you. I hope your ears were burning. Because there was a comment in the Discord about that. Yeah, you forgot barbarians. And I didn't. I feel like I need to recruit you to literally talk about barbarians and the stereotypes thereof and breaking them and what that means and such. So yeah, I talked about that. So this week, yes, we will be talking about clerics. For those who don't know, we are on a mission to each week do a breakdown, lift up, rebuild, and all that kind of stuff. We'll team stream. Yeah, we will be crossing streams all week long, man. Get your fluids up. No dehydration. Anyway. Yeah, absolutely. But that'll be based on your time schedule, there, dude. So yeah, yeah. Anyway, this week we're going to talk about clerics in tabletop RPGs, fantasy, and we're going to break it down. Today is Monster Monday, by the way, and Monster Monday, we talk about, of course, monsters, NPCs, adversaries, allies, like that is what we're talking about. And I picked an image for the thumbnail that is not something normally associated with the idea of clerics in Dungeons and Dragons. By the way, what very few people don't realize, because we're more or less associated with fantasy, that even the title cleric is far more Middle Eastern, Muslim, Islamic than it would be necessary related to, say, like a priest or a monk or a rabbi or a bishop or deacon and all these other types of titles that represent religious figures. And I think for this Monster Monday, and it's strange to start off this way, but I think one of the things we forget about are like the adversaries to clerics. Like that's a perfect, I think even far more than the classic paladin, the knight. Clerics can have a pretty well-defined enemy of sorts, and that are very much underplayed. I thought we would talk about that, about like if putting enemies and adversaries in the paths of clerics and then using them that way. Jarl DM says clerics are one of my favorite classes to play. I'm an atheist, and I find the challenge of playing someone with absolute certainty in their faith to be really interesting and fun. You are absolutely right. I'm more of a fluid agnostic kind of individual. Like I do believe there are things we don't understand, but I fall on the side of like, well, that might be true, but I'm a scientific person myself, so I fall into that. But I do love clerics, though. I love the idea that there's somebody else who has a certainty about them, yet at the same time, one of the strange things. Okay, here's one of the arguments. Let's go down the squirrely path. One of the strange things that happens in role-playing games is this, and I've even seen comments like this put up into like social media, where people will say like, we had a character who was we had a player who was part of our group and was really pissed off because someone else was playing a cleric or something like that. And it's like, come on, you got to separate this is pretend, right? This is improv. You can separate your personal journey away from another individual. And one of the arguments that comes up is that if clerics represent the absolute certainty that there is a divine power, right? And most people say, well, if there really is a divine power, wouldn't everybody be religious? And the answer to that is no, because in in our own history, we know that people were absolutely positively certain that there were gods of all types, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people were devoted to them, right? There's a difference between knowing something exists and then having a faith and a certainty that they will guide you through your life. There's lots of there are lots of religious uh, stories where people are raising their fists in the air and their middle fingers, and they're like, "F you, divine gods on Olympus!" Right? People will do that, and so that one doesn't necessarily mean the other. One just it just means that yeah, people know that they exist, but believe in um their guidance, believe that they are all powerful or that they are brilliant or something like that. No, but a lot of people were just like, F them, blah 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 blah, right? Yeah. Now, y'all DM does say that the difference in a fantasy world is that there is definitive proof of divine, though. No, 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 no. People believe that there was proof that gods existed. They believed it, absolutely positively believed it. The difference is not in the belief. It would be as if saying it is more like, do you put your life and your trust in them, or do you go, yeah, they're real, but they either don't care about me or don't have my best interests in heart, or I am not of people who consider themselves not to be of a stature that would place them in the good graces of these other divine beings. You know what I mean? Like, oh, only the learned people can make miracles. So what do I have to do with that? Or only the rich, or only the blue bloods that live in this other place have the God's ear. For me, they just shit on me. So let me just go about my day, and hopefully they ignore me and I ignore them. Right? That's the thing. I'm with you, Cam. Cam says I'm pan, pantheistic. I love playing clerics because I find it fun to explore different sets of values and forms of devotion. Me too. Me too. And it's not always now. Clerics, of course, are very devoted, but the people around them and the communities is. I love that back and forth when it comes to things like that. Jarl says, in a world with divine magic, you can be against the gods or indifferent to them, but you can't deny their existence. No, never said that. Yeah, yeah. They are they miracles, or are they just magic like wizards? That's always been an issue with when you talk about gaming mechanics versus the fantasy exploration of what divine magic really is. Um, Yeah, Andres Martin says a god is at the end of the day an authority figure, and a lot of people hate that miracles are not. Oh yes, yeah. People just in general do not like authority figures. People telling them what to do, even if it's in their best interests. Lots of people don't like being told what to do, right? So yeah. Y'all says you can literally commune directly with a god. There are other planes of existence where you can go and meet them. True, but how common is that, right? It's and okay. Um, let's separate the meta here. Okay, so we as players get to choose what our clerics can do. We have a list of spell-like abilities and who we worship and blah blah blah. But in the game, when that character exists, are they choosing to do the thing that the divine powers give them? Or are they hoping for the best? And we, as the player, represent the divine power that's allowing the good thing to happen that they're requesting to happen. They don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, does a is a cleric and mind you, I'm saying this out loud because you can play this many different ways. Does a cleric go up to their fallen ally and go, the power of the gods flows through me, I'm going to heal your wounds? Or do they go up to their fallen ally and go, please save my ally, and then their wounds are then healed, right? Which one is it? And for the most part, everyone plays it like, well, I get to decide what to do, and the power flows through me, much like, say, Game of Thrones had a character in it that could, bring one of their, literally bring one of their own allies back to life, right? And yet, there were lots of people around them that were still like, yeah, I see you doing this thing, yeah, but for me, my life hasn't been better, so whatever. Right? Yeah. The camera says nowadays people wouldn't even settle for the body of a dead god to research. Like, yeah. See, I told you, it can be killed. It's not a god, right? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Now, your all DM says, I think at least in the design of D&D, clerics choose which spells to use literally by name. The spells are codified and such. Right. And that's, I don't want to say that's a problem for me, but I would love to, for me, I always felt like it takes away a little bit of the mystery. Like, how I've played a game where a with a player who wanted it to be that way. Like, he picked kind of like not a random set of spells, was like, okay, I'm going to number the spells and then pray for something good to happen, and then something might happen out of their control that is within the confines of their clerical choosing, right? Which is a little bit different to do. And I think that would throw a huge monkey wrench into a game design system, but I think it would be kind of cool. Yeah. Deadman says, in second edition AD&D, the second edition AD&D supplement that covered the gods actually said most gods used magical circus to talk to priests during commune. Yeah, I believe it is described that, like, it's like based on your level, there's like avatars and other intermediaries that talk to low-level clerics until you get to a certain level. Until then, you are literally communicating directly with them, or at least their right-hand fellows, I guess. Also, the communing doesn't necessarily need to be a one-way system, right? Like, it's very easily the gods could communicate with humanity. Like, I'm gonna tell you what to do. Don't bother me after this, kind of thing. The communing doesn't necessarily need to be like a vocal, like, hey, talk to me this way. It could be through meditation or, the flaying of flesh, or drugs, or during sex, or it could be it could be in omens or whatever. So based on the flavor of how you want to play a character, especially those low level ones, like someone could very easily claim they're getting images and voices and messages from the gods. And yes, you might be displaying power, but when other people who are not as religiously inclined as that individual, they could very easily go, well, maybe there's something special about you, right? Like, maybe you're not hearing things quite the same way. So I imagine that. Jarl DM says Thoros of Myr is one of my favorite characters in Game of Thrones. He's a drunken fool who was chosen for some reason he doesn't understand and is given these powers. That's another thing I want to talk about. Like, sometimes it's the gods move. Yeah, Cameron. Cam's like, I believe you're metagaming. Yeah, but I love that. Yeah, because clerics are kind of a metagame type of character class, and it get a little problematic if you go too far with it. But the idea that the gods move in mysterious ways, just because of the way the mechanics of the game are set up, it kind of puts you into this, like, oh, everything's codified. It's got a name. We know what happens. There's, it's like an on-off button rather than a mystery to it. But even with that, there is this, like, I made a cleric that had a criminal background at one point, and the concept was that the character was he was actually a slaver, of all things, and they took refuge in a small religious institution, and when they left, he was forced to kill the priest that gave them shelter, and then he decided to put the priest robes on to hide from the guards. And then the god was basically was like, "You killed one of mine, you're going to have to replace him." And he was like, "Fuck," you know. And so the idea that the gods can pick and choose who receives their divine blessing or and whatnot, I think is sometimes underplayed, right? Normally it's like, oh well, the most religious person has the ear of the gods, and sometimes that's not the case. It's even the ones who are like, you know what, I used to believe in you, but F you, and and then they're besieged by it, or being requested to do things that they normally wouldn't want to do in their own life. Yeah. Jarl DM says the Abrahamic God has the Metatron, who is an angel who speaks to mortals, as mortals cannot withstand the power of God's voice and presence. As a matter of fact, you could even portray it as like there are some clerical spells and abilities that give the character classes the ability to see beyond. Like, how I wonder how devastating it would be to run out of your spell slots and not be able to see beyond. It would almost feel like you were blind and deaf. I feel like it would feel that way for the character class to do that. Um, yeah, Andreas Martin says, the obligations and existence of the gods varies too much from setting to setting. In Forgotten Realms, they walked the earth and made a mess. In Eberron, they exist in the actions they represent. And it can wildly change from one to the other. I agree with you, there, A. It can, I mean, it's like, do the gods literally walk the earth? Do they is every storm like are the literal planets being spun by the gods, or is it Apollo riding a chariot through the sky as the sun, and is every rainstorm, and then how do you reconcile like science and the artificer or artificer, and uh, the science of how we look at the world versus the in our fantasy versus the gods and such, like is one game I often talk about is within a ring of fire. They have each day is considered a throne, and there's 77 thrones in the cycle of life, and each day a god sits upon it, so that the night day cycle is different each day, and it has nothing to do with planetary orbiting. It's basically like, oh, I'm the god of light, so there's going to be 24 hours of light today, but tomorrow it might be another god who's like, oh, there's going to be 6 hours of daylight and another 18 hours of darkness, and then it changes again. Like, how much influence do the gods have? So that's just a thing. But yeah, yeah, Dead Man puts into the Discord, uh, the Metatron. Is an angel in Judeo-Islamic and Christian mystic mythology, mentioned in a few brief passages in the Agada and mystic Kabbalistic texts within the rabbinic literature. The figure forms one of the traces for the presence of dualist proclivities and the otherwise monotheistic visions of both the. I'm not going down that rabbit hole. I'm just gonna all I'm gonna do is butcher names and offend somebody. So yeah, always dangerous when it comes to clerical kind of things. But anyway, let's get back on board with this. All right, so one of the other things that I feel like one of the other things I feel in when it comes to clerics in role playing games is basically like, okay, well, first let me set this up and then I'll go into it. I think the difference between a cleric and a warlock for me is that on one hand, the cleric has faith in a divine, otherworldly power, and then as a side effect receives power from it. But they would have that faith nonetheless. Whereas on a warlock, they expect to get a power back from their devotion, and they expect the power first, the devotion is just a side effect of gaining that power, right? It's one is I believe in the gods, and then the gods come and bless you, and you're like, oh, that's great, thanks. The other one is look, I'm looking for a blessing. If I get a blessing, I think I'll be devoted to you. You know what I mean? Um, yep. The Metatrons, and I believe you can go even deeper with that in terms of like the layers of like the angelic powers and where they go. But I think one of the problems with it though is that Dungeons and Dragons also tends to is extremely Eurofied when it comes to those kinds of um I saw that too, Tesla. Yeah. Tesla and Dead Man are dropping knowledge in the Discord, and no picture came up. Yeah, I'm surprised. But anyway, um like, oh, Jarl DM says clerics make for excellent villains because they can be zealots, work within the system of power, and can often justify any evil in the name of their faith. And yeah, justification, rationalizations can push people pretty far. I mean, even till today, like the deaths of innocent women and children can very easily be rationalized based on someone's faith. Lots of hatreds have been, genocides have been done that way, and I think uh, oftentimes I think we underutilize the idea that a cleric, a character class, could be instructed to do some of these things or take part in these things, right? Like, I mean, how about a crusade? How interesting would it be for a character to be told to go on a crusade? Yep. Yeah, your all DMs quote, kill them all, God will know his own. Yep. Yep, the Children's Crusade. Andreas Martin brings that up. I mean, and then what happens when no, yeah, I got it. Yeah, what happens when the character chooses or doesn't choose to follow the mandate, right? Do they instantly lose their power because they don't follow the instructions, or do they keep their power, don't follow the instructions, and are just like, wait a minute, is this a test? And as some have said, it's always a test, right? Like maybe everything is a test. Um, Instead of going like being a dungeon master and going 0 to 60, like, oh, you broke the tenets of your god, you have no powers, which is just, oh my god, I hate that. So paladins and clerics not so much, but the idea of paladins losing their power if they don't follow their tenets immediately is pretty ridiculous. It, when you're trying to have fun in a game rather than trying to tell a story in a dramatic fashion. Yeah. Ismofa says, I've got a paladin I'm about to give a divine quest. I am probably going to have some agent of the heavens appear and place a okay, I'm going to butcher the. It's either called a geese or a Gaius spell on him. Yeah, that's a little heavy-handed. The spell exists, but I've always felt like the you must go on the quest, and if you don't, you suffer this kind of harm is a pretty railroady kind of thing. Now, it depends on how railroady you want to make it. Like, can they stop off and help some innocent people on their quest? Can it be like Denzel Washington in the movie The Book of Eli, where there's this individual going on this quest to do a thing? I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but ends up getting distracted by trying to save other people. If they literally stop to get something to eat, and you're like, I don't think you're going to do that, is Mofa. But if they stop to get something to eat and save some innocent people, that shouldn't be a punishment. It should just be like, it should just be the thing. Yeah, I see it. There's been a lot of TV shows where the angel comes to Earth and they've got their wings tucked up under their clothes, and they can't release their exaltations and whatnot. Yep. Thank you very much there, Cam. Now, um, th- the idea of the cleric being told to go on a mission, and a lot of times, let's be honest. Usually, those things are like, usually those things are designed with like, hey, go to this vague place to do a vague thing to bring about a vague, reaction or something. Uh, yeah, Cam. I agree with you there, Cam. Yeah, Denzel plays such a cool character in that movie. Yeah, the Book of Eli, and the very end of it though is pretty interesting, and it makes you wonder from the beginning of the movie, the when you realize, okay, maybe I am giving something away. If you haven't seen it, when at the end of the movie you realize he's blind, right? And it makes you wonder at the beginning of the movie because there are certain situations where he like walks past it on his journey, and you're like, is it because he doesn't see it, or does he have vision only for so long as he can get there, right? Um, yeah, it's Mofa because I was fake chastising his Mofa, talking about the putting a geas spell or geese spell on the paladin. Responds says, "Yeah, I'm pretty loose with it. Only if he's like, no, I'm not going to do this, or let's go do some other quest for the bartender that will take 3 months. There will be consequences. Yeah, and mind you, you can make those consequences any number of things, right? If you like." I'm not going to cross the mountains. I'm going to take a boat and sail to another continent, and maybe a storm happens, or the boat sinks, or the captain comes down with some kind of disease or something before they set sail, and the paladin's like, "Oops, maybe I shouldn't involve these other people." Um, by the way, those images put in the Discord. Funny how I don't know if any of you are grognardian enough to remember when clerics were unable to use edged weapons. And I forget what vague reference there was about clerics using edged weapons, but the Morning Star was like the weapon of choice back in like second edition and before then. Um, don't know where that came from, but it was always clerics always had a big like mace Morning Star hammer in their hand. And I don't know what that was about. Yeah. Clerics in Celtic and Jarl DM says clerics in Celtic and Norse traditions are often weirdos who take a lot of psychoactive drugs and live on the outskirts of society. Oh, yes, they did. They speak with the gods through mushroom trips and other psychedelic weirdness, and have to keep themselves separate from normal people. Yep, and like Dead Man says, yep, Native American shamans and clerics were the same. They sure were, and even dare I say epileptic seizures and other what today we would call afflictions were kind of related to that as well. Um, and even manic depression, schizophrenia, and whatnot that we today was related to that in our past as well. So maybe something like that could actually be re reskinned, reformatted into a fantasy setting as well. Uh, yeah, Andrews Martin says it was because they couldn't spill blood. The concept of using blunt instruments, although a little ridiculous because here's some more art. Because I'm like, you do realize a blunt object could spill, does have the potential to spill quite a bit of blood. It's not, yeah, I don't know. I get it, but I'm like, in practice, that doesn't really work. I mean, after how many battles are clerics like wiping blood and gristle off of their mace? Like 30 battles, and I still haven't been able to kill them without spilling blood. Man, I'm really terrible at this. Oh man. Yeah, Jarl DM says it's probably believed that maces were employed by the clergy in warfare to avoid shedding blood. Sine in infusine sanguineus. Uh, I know I butchered the Latin on that. Um, yeah, yeah. Somehow internal hemorrhages are perfectly fine. Yeah. Here's an extra concussion for you, and here's a broken bone for you. Bang. I don't know. It's and also kind of weird. It, I know somebody had to make a decision somewhere along the way for weapons and such, but kind of weird that a mace somehow does less damage than a longsword just because it's not pointy. Always found that weird. Like, mm, most weapons are pretty dangerous based on the person wielding it, not necessarily the weapon itself. I would not want to be pounded to death with a mace if I had to choose between being bludgeoned to death with a mace and being stabbed to death. I don't know. I don't know if I could make that choice. Cam Cameron's like, quote, like, I was an adventurer like you until I took a cleric to the knee. Cleric shows up and you've got a gambling addiction and some knuckle busters show up from the mob and they both look at each other like, all right, you take the left knee, I'll take the right, and the cleric's like, sure. Bang. Oh man. Jarl DM says Greek oracles, notably in Delphi, are thought to have inhaled um, from volcanic vents to speak their prophecies. Yeah. The image. Oh my god. Look at that. Yeah. Perfect tool if you don't want to spill any blood. Yeah, right. Yeah, 10-year-old could spill some blood with that if you pounded a full-grown adult with it the right way. Oh man, meat tenderizer. Yep. Y'all dances. Weapons are tools for specific situations. Good luck killing a plate mailed knight with a longsword. Yep. Yep. Oh, dead man. Wow. The first DM I had made a mace out of rebar. Oh, I love maybe I should call the squirrely again, but I love those shows where people are like making where they make weapons out of like scrap metal and stuff and just pound the hell out of it until it turns into this other weapon and everything. And it'll take like you said, like rebar or like I don't know, scrap metal from like the junkyard or something. It's pretty cool how some of those guys are able to um blacksmiths are able to forge weapons and stuff. It's sweet. But anyway, um I think the other thing that I think is kind of undersold is well, two things. One is the job function of a cleric. Like, what else do they do when they're not going about beating things about the head and shoulders with their maces? And the other thing I think is like what we know through mythology itself that the gods have placed on earth plenty of enemies. Why aren't the clerics going after them, right? Like, how many player characters are specifically out like doing exorcisms or going after demons or destroying minotaurs because one of the gods of the pantheon have like spilled their blood on the earth and need to destroy them. Like why aren't there clerics who are for every creature in fantasy that has been deposited on the earth? I'm surprised there aren't a legion of clerics whose only function it is, much like a witch hunter, dragon slayer, um, vampire hunter. Like, why aren't there other clerical hunters opposed to um, the earthly rendition of another divine being, right? Like, of course, there's plenty. Clerics have always been associated with the undead in a role playing sense. Turning the undead because the undead are an affront to both life and death, the cycle of life and death, and so there's a link there. But a cleric's opposed to Tiamat and every single dragon out there. Cleric's opposed to come on, what's Groomsh and the goblinoids themselves, right? Like, and I'm not saying literally. Yes, you can do the whole crusade. We're going to slay each and every one of them, but also clerics in a city whose only job is to protect the city from shape changers or ghosts and possessions, and of course the other jobs that clerics do when they're not beating things about the head and shoulders. Are they educators? Are they part of the financial institution? Are they um, city guards? Are they? Come on, there's other things. Of course, are they healers and in the medicine? Are they? Do they child rear or take care of the elderly? Do they have hospice? Are they curing diseases? Like what other job, including PCs? Like what are they doing other than I am religious and I've got power? Like what are they using it for? And if they are using it for something, are they using it in the manner in which they're expected to use it? When a cleric goes on an adventure, maybe people are looking at them like, you need to stay home. Like, where are you going? I'm going to go find adventure and treasure. And they're like, no, you're not. You're coming back here and helping build monuments to the gods. Like, what do you think you're doing? I don't care. You could call fire down from the sky. You need to call that fire down from the sky to keep us warm in this frigid temperature. Son of a. Anyway. Oh man. Cam. I fear for your knuckles there, fighting with rebar. Oh man. Your DM says priestesses of Loth are extremely devout, and their function is absolutely to carry out Loth's will in a way that most good god servants don't manage. Yeah, there we go with the rationalization of like performing a duty for the gods that is another level of um, it supersedes our own ethics and morals. And where do you stop, right? It's the not here to make fun of or make a judgment about, but it's the hey, here's a message, take your son up to this high mountain ledge and kill them for me. And the person's like, what? Yeah, you're supposed to do this thing. I want you to do this thing for me. And are you being instructed to do a thing and you're supposed to do it? Or are you being instructed to do a thing because you're being tested? Right. And that's always the dichotomy between the absolute faith and questionable faith, right? And you, of course, being judged by your peers when you're being given an instruction, especially if they know what that instruction is. Like, aren't you going to take your child and go up on that mountain? And you're just like, hell no, I'm not. And everyone's like, well, why wouldn't you? And you're like, well, why would you? Like, well, I'm not the one being told to. You're the one being told to do it. Finger pointing and all that kind of stuff. Create a lot of conflict and a lot of drama around a situation like that, which I kind of like. Andres Martin says, I like the Eberron approach to that. A priest is a normal person, no spell casting, a guide. Well, there's a lot of people who are priests who aren't character class clerics, so we have to abide by that too. Like, I made a rogue who was part of a religious organization, and it's very easy to be any other character class and still be religious. There's nothing preventing Fightor from being a religious knight or paladin. They just happen to be Fightor or druid or monk or something like that. So I think we undersell that too. That there are people who have no divine powers, are completely devout and religious, and absolutely believe that the power flows through them, even though they do not have those powers, right? So there is that, and then there's others who just have the faith that maybe not, today's not my time, but my faith is true. One of these days, maybe or maybe not, I'll be called to service or something like that as well. The difference between, again, clerics and warlocks. Andres goes on to say, a cleric is an elite envoy, very few in numbers, who are always on the lookout for those enemies of the faith. Which brings kind of to mind, like, when talking in vacuums about the power of gods and clerics and things, like, I guess part of it would have to deal with what percentage of individuals have the ears of the gods. Like, how many first level clerics are there, right? If in a group of 5,000 village or town of 5,000, if there's 100 clerics, then everybody's going to know, have some kind of relationship to it. But in a group of 5,000, if there's just one individual, maybe five individuals, you may hear stories about it, but you may never even meet this person. And even if you meet the person, you may never even see a miracle happen. And if you know of a miracle happening, you might go, yeah, but that was a one-off. That happened to be that one time when that one thing happened because of the one thing. And you may not necessarily not believe in it, but not believe in the absolute certainty that a regular thing could happen over and over again on like turning on a spigot, right? Like you could believe in the gods and believe in miracles and believe that they could turn away enemies just by the glare of the sun and keep us safe and all that kind of business. But that might be one of those like one in a lifetime things, right? When you see a cleric put their hands on someone who's, a young boy who's broken their leg, or a young girl who's been who's escaped from an enemy or something and healed their wounds, you might be like, oh wow, that's the first time I've seen a miracle. I'll never see that again. Trudge, doing harvesting and stuff like that. When sometimes we may not consider how many there are. Now, some of the opposition to clerics too, it could be from the idea of like the anti-cleric, kind of like the anti-paladin, the people who are speaking up against the clerical institutions themselves. It's the Satanists of our real world, right? And where their power comes from. So there's a lot that has to do with the idea of the anti-clerics gaining power too, and what they're doing in the world, and the PC stepping up to stop them. Andreas Martin says the priests in 3.5, they stole power from the gods. That's another thing too. Are there people who can steal the power from gods? This is a weird thing to say, but when a player character cleric, even if they're good, gets their power from the gods, is it like a permanency? Like, do they get the power and then they can walk away with their finger in there? Like, whatever. See ya, Thor. I'm done. I'm a Tempest cleric now. Nothing you can do about it. Like, I don't know. It depends on your setting and how you feel about it, but it's a possibility. And again, since gods move in mysterious ways, maybe there is something to be said for a cleric who turns against their own faith, still has their powers because they must be set on a mission to accomplish something that requires them to be out of the faith, right? Yep. Clerics, Jarl DM says, clerics of evil gods would certainly be major players in the world. It doesn't have to be as extreme as Satanism either. Arguably, there are plenty of opportunistic televangelists and such. Yeah. Hey, they're the king and queen makers, right? We know in our own history that the church is a very important, well, our own history, our present day, the church is extremely important when it comes to politics, to be, no matter how ridiculous, when a church official places their blessing as a speaker for that religion upon the forehead of another person of power, there's a lot of influence with that. Yeah, like your Aldeem says, in America, at least, faith plays a huge part in politics. Yeah, I cringe. We're getting to the end. I cringe whenever I see politicians, cozy up to it's election time, so they have to go to church and cozy up to the religious individual there as they're coming out of their church and sitting there. I'm just like, whatever. You guys are like, it's so, dare I say, masturbatory when I see it, because I'm like, no, you guys aren't friends. And of course, both individuals know what they're doing. They're playing the game, and they know playing the game means that the public believes in that game, which I think makes it even more disgusting. Because I'm like, you know what? If you were really that faithful politician, you'd be there all the time, right? And then I'm looking at the political leader, the the religious leader, like, this person's only showing up for the cameras. They're not really your friend. I'm not going to go there because that's not the only thing that's happening. Yeah, yeah, it's very performative. Hell's yes. Cam says, what about false clerics, pretenders, or brainwashed arcane casters? They could be of a fake god or a cult of personality. Oh hell yes. Oh hell's yes. Why wouldn't they be? Um, we know that those people have existed since the beginning of time. I'm thinking, like, why wouldn't an alchemist or an arcanist or something like that, an apothecary or something, per, either believe that they are from a divine, gain their abilities from a divine power, or they're con artists, or maybe they are just, maybe they're using science, herbalism, and such. I'm thinking more like tribalistic, but they are also teachers of faith. So the two could actually be simultaneous. Like, I'm an educator in my tribe, and I'm also one who wants them to believe in the gods, even though I know my capabilities aren't divine powers. So you could turn the dials on this all kinds of ways, from the good evil opportunistic dial up and down, and then you could turn up the, like, are they really divine powers? Yes, let's turn it down. No, these are actually just skills they've learned, or something like that. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Jarl Du Sims, if you were really a good Christian, you'd be the hell far away from politics. Amen to that. as, I, as I'm being sarcastic, yes, amen to that. You'd be like, I'm not believing in your politics. Like, I'm well beyond that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Um, yeah, can a peasant tell the difference between arcane help and divine help? If you use your arcane powers to do miracles, is there any visible difference? And I'm with you. I think there wouldn't be much of a difference. As a matter of fact, you could how easy would it be for, since it's Monster Monday, how easy would it be for a lot of monsters out there to, hell, every shape changer could very easily claim that they are, um, like, either cursed by the gods and you can help me to do a thing, or um, all you have to do is this one thing for me to help me cure, take this curse from the gods off of me, or insinuate themselves into a population to become like a cult of personality, having a bunch of sycophants around you. Like, yeah, it would be very easily. So this is another good reason in a fantasy realm why your average villagers are always, like, critical of people who are clerics, because they could say, listen, we've been we've been deceived too many times. Like, I don't believe, yeah, I know you've got power, but you're using those powers against us, and I don't want to fall for that. And you're like, no, I am a cleric. Like, sure you are. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, Andrews Martin says the arcane helper is a guy in a dress who probably has weird symbols, flies around and smells weird of chemicals. Yeah. You're like, no, really, the gods taught me this. And you're like, you smell funny. Go away. So yes, you are so right. Augustin Rodriguez, what's going on? A clever wizard and a monster can pass as a priest. Oh hell yeah. Illusions, shape changing. Not even you don't even need to do that. You could It would be very easy for, like, you guys know I love my mid-level creatures like Nagas, Sphinx, whatever. But you get the point. Oni, Ogre Magi, a mid-level wizard, very no low-level wizard, first to third level, and a couple of monsters, one or a few monsters could very easily mimic clerical prowess. You know what I mean? Pretty easily. You know, a light spell cast on a blade and a little bit of thaumaturgy and prestidigitation, and you're done. Oh man. Oh yeah, like Deadman says, like the cleric in the Southern City in Full Metal Alchemist, using alchemy powered by a philosopher's stone to fake the miracles. Yep, a single magic item could very easily do that as well. You know, get yourself a nice wand or rod or something like that. Say a couple of words, and although all these people faking it, I don't know how successful they might be if the gods are really walking the earth. Thor is like, oh, I've got an extra lightning bolt. Time for me to strike down an unbeliever. Someone using my name. Don't use my name out your mouth. Cam says magic missile could be explained away as divine lights. Mage armor could be spirit armor and so on. Oh, hell yes. Hell's yes. Now, okay, so as we start to get to the end of this, right? Like, would this be okay? Could a mage do this and just be a mage who happens to be religious? Right? Maybe they come from a mage. They're being taught arcane powers from a wizard school that believes in the divine use of their powers, or are they a like an arcane trickster? Are they going around like tricking people? They're doing. I don't know. I think the idea of having both, you know, Gandalf the White is kind of like that in a way. In the essence of like portraying his powers and being goodly and kind and coming back from the dead and all that kind of business. I think so. You know what? Yeah. Wow. Cameron says a priest who is a sorcerer or even a divine blood sorcerer. I'm with that. Andrews Martin brings up the Medusa oracles are a staple. The secluded diviner or diviner who offers help for a strange quest or expensive price. That's very often too. You know, the cryptic omen from beyond to go on this quest to do a thing with the hood and the shroud and all that kind of business. Yeah, I'm with you on that. But anyway, guys, before the music loops around once again, you guys have a great one out there, and I will see you tomorrow on Trope Tuesday. Everybody have a great one. I will see you later. Yeah. Bye. And by the way, guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.